When making a TAS, it can be really useful to have some RAM addresses. The RAM will keep track of everything that the game is doing, and you could find things such as position, speed, health, enemy health, and so on. If you're lucky enough, the RAM addresses will already be known. For this example, it's Mega Man, and you could find the addresses on TAS videos, but more often than not, you'll have to find these yourself. In this video, I'm going to show you how to find some very simple RAM addresses, and I'm going to use Mega Man as an example. So we'll load up the ROM. Now we can have a look at the RAM itself if we go into Hex Editor, and there's a lot of addresses. And basically these are broken up into bytes. Each byte will have some information about the game. So I don't know what this byte does, but it's at the address 0046 and it keeps track of something. And these are all in hexadecimal, which is a counting system, but instead of going up from 0 to 9 and then going to 2 digits, it goes from 0 to 15 and goes to 2 digits. So it'll look something like this. You've got your normal counting numbers and your hex numbers. I won't go too much into depth here, but it's just a different way of counting. So you go up to 0F and then you add 2 digits and you keep going on like that. And eventually you get up to FF, and that's as big as 2 digits in hex can get. And that's at 255. So this is a bit like how you can count up to 99 in decimal, which is 10 times 10, take 1. Here you can count up to 255, which is 16 times 16, take 1. And if you ever need to convert it, you can do it in a calculator on Windows. So if I wanted to see what BD was, BD in hex was, it's 189 in decimal. So this is what all the RAM looks like. And obviously if you're trying to find, for example, its position or something, it's going to be really hard to search through all this and find it. So that's why we have some tools for it. So the main tool is called RAM Search, and that is what we use to search for specific RAM addresses. So we have these comparison operators, and that's basically a way to narrow down what the addresses could be. So if I start a new search and it defaults to equal to previous value. So previous value is what all these RAM addresses were when I hit new search. So I hit new search, it takes all these, and then if I search equal to previous value, it'll get rid of all the ones that weren't equal to it. So it'll only keep the ones that are equal to what it was when I started. So for example, these ones that are going crazy right now, they'll get rid of those because that wouldn't be his position because it's changing and he's not moving. So it'll get rid of those crazy values that are just changing all the time. And you can also do an auto search. So if you press this button, it searches every frame. And I can jump and that'll get rid of his vertical position because I'm looking for his horizontal position at the moment. And we'll stop that auto search. So what I'm going to do is just move him a bit to the left. And then I'm going to search not equal to previous value. So what that'll do is it's taken, when the last time I hit search, it basically took a snapshot of all this. And now if I'm searching not equal to, it'll only keep the things that have changed since it took that snapshot. So there we go. It's narrowed it down quite a lot. So now we can pretty much look at all these values. This value here is changing really rapidly every frame, so that's not his position because he's not moving. Similarly, these three are always at 0 when he's, well, they're not his position because I can move here and they're not changing. They go to 64-ish and then they don't change as he's moving. So I can get rid of those three, and now we've narrowed down his position. So I'm going to click Add to RAM Watch. So that RAM Watch basically keeps track of all the values you want to keep track of, rather than trying to find all of them in here and kind of look at them manually. It just keeps track of the ones you want. And I'm going to double click it and say Mega Man X because it's his X position. Okay, so one way to check if you've actually got what you want is to freeze the address, and what that will do is the game can't change that address. So if I've frozen the X position, that basically means he can't move, which is right. So I'm trying to move and he can't because the X position is frozen. So that's a good indication that I've actually got the right address. But then always make sure to unfreeze the addresses, especially if you're going to start making the TAS. Never have addresses frozen, because that would make it invalid. Okay, so we've got his X position, and there's also kind of a finer measurement. So if you think he's at 38 in the X position, but he could be at like 38.5 or something smaller than just what it's being measured in now. So we could look for that, and I guess a way to test for that would be if he's at 37 here, if I can move him a bit without changing that from 37, I might be able to narrow down what his address actually is. So for example, if I'm turning him around, so I'm going to start a new RAM search. And now I'm at 37 here. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to get rid of all these crazy values that are changing every frame. And that'll just leave the ones that are more normal. And I'm going to try and move without changing this 37. So I've turned around. Now I'm going to search not equal to. Hopefully turning around will have made him move a little bit, but not enough to kind of go up in one of these units. And let's have a look. I think, see, these three values are the ones we got rid of before because they weren't changing. And we're just left with one. So I'm going to add that to the RAM watch. Call it something like sub position. So I mean, you could think of it like 29 point this number, or you could think of it like this is the units and this is the tens or something. But basically this is kind of a bigger position, keeps track of where he is on a bigger scale, and this is something more fine. And if you want your addresses to come up here, you can leave display watches on screen on, or you can take it off. It's personal preference really. Having this window open is sometimes a bit laggy, so what you can do is minimize it and have these on screen, and that's usually a bit less laggy. But it's up to you as well. Sometimes it can get a bit cluttered, so as I get more addresses I might turn that off. Alright, so we've got those two values. And you can kind of see what it's doing. So this sub-address is changing a lot because I'm going more than one of these units every frame. But if I stop and I'm at maybe 51,240 and I just turn left a bit, I'm at 51,176. If I go left a bit more, I'm at 51,112. I'm at 51,48. So you can see that's a finer way of measuring his position. Another thing you can do is view this in different ways. So I've got it as unsigned here. And if you prefer looking at it in hex, then you can just change it there. Similarly, I could change it to hex here. And instead of coming up as decimal numbers, they'll come up as hex like I mentioned before. So we can see 4A, 4B, 4D. So that's in hex now. I'll leave these in decimal just for this tutorial. Usually I'd prefer to look at them in hex though. Okay, another thing we can find is Y position. So very similar to the process we found X. So what I'm going to do is start a new RAM search. Again, that's taking a snapshot of what it is when I click new. So I'm not changing my Y position now, so I can do this auto search and maybe walk around without changing how high Mega Man is. And then I'm going to stop that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to jump up here and land there. So I've got the same Y velocity because I'm not moving up or down, but the Y position has changed. So I'm going to search for that and it's going to narrow it down. If I just searched while I was up in the air, then it would probably pick up the Y velocity values as well, which may be a good thing or maybe a bad thing depending on how you're looking at it. But it narrows it down a lot, and you can figure out which ones are the position and which one's the velocity that way. So I've got not equal to search there, so when I click not equal to, I wanted it to keep the ones that his position down there is not equal to his position up there, so that narrows it down a lot. And I'm going to search here as well, and not equal to again. That only got rid of one address, but it was one less. And let's see. So here this 0295 is sometimes 193 down and up. So that's not the position because that's changing. It's the same position here as it is here if that was position, and that's not correct. This one doesn't really look like it's to do with position because I'm one there and one there, so that's the same. Gonna get rid of that. And we narrowed it down some more. Similarly, 227 up and down, that's not position. And if 002D was position, it would be changing when I jump, which it doesn't. So that's not Y position. So we're left with this as Y position. So I'll add that to RamWatch and always label them. Okay, so that's his Y position. And I could do a similar thing for his final Y position, but I might leave that because that's similar to what we do with the X position. So the game might have a few different ways of keeping track of the X position. So this X position looks like where he is in the level, pretty much. And it loops over here. So it goes from 255 back to 0. So there's probably another digit. So if you think of this as the units, just the tens, and maybe there's hundreds as well. But you can find that pretty easily. You just go here, search for equal to all here, and then you'd search for not equal to here. But I'm not going to do that. So there's another way it might measure it is screen X. So the screen's not moving at all here, but the game probably has a way to keep track of where the screen actually is. So I'm going to start a new search, take it equal to, do that auto search, but have it equal to and without moving the screen. And then I'm going to scroll the screen a bit, and I'll give an example of doing a greater than comparison. So it's fair to assume that as the screen scrolls right, the numbers are going to increase. So I'm doing a greater than comparison. I've scrolled the screen a bit to the right, so I'm searching for all the bytes that are greater than what it was when I last clicked search. So that's gotten rid of a lot. And I might do that again. I'll scroll the screen a bit more. And I'll do another greater than. And that's gotten rid of a lot of addresses. Okay, so let's see. So it's not this one because that's not changing nearly enough. I can scroll the screen without that one having changed. These are just changing really rapidly, so the screen's not moving there. And we're left with one address. So it's fair to assume this is the screen address. And again, we can check by freezing it. And the screen doesn't move. Well, the enemies kind of move, but the screen doesn't move if we freeze it. And again, I didn't show when I found the Y, but you can freeze that as well, and you won't be able to jump. So that is the Y as well. It's a good way to test, but do make sure you unfreeze them. So I'm going to add that to RamWatch and Screen X. And I could, there's also another thing that it might keep track of. So it's keeping track of where he is in the actual level. It's keeping track of where the screen is, and it could also keep track of where he is on the screen. So if that was the case, he'd be increasing, and then here, he'd really be in the same spot on the screen, but the screen would be moving. So it could keep track of that as well, but I'm not going to find that. Some games don't have where you are in the level completely, it just has where the screen is and where you are on the screen, and that can be really frustrating. But in that case, it's sometimes better to just look at speed values rather than position values. And speaking of which, we can find his X velocity as well. So I'm going to start a new search. So again, it's taken a snapshot there, and I'm going to do this auto search. Oh, make sure you click equal to before you do the auto search, because it was searching for things that were greater each frame, which is not what I want. So that's gotten rid of that, and he should have no X velocity there. That's why I did the auto search. So now I'm going to move a bit, and then I'm going to search equal to again. And what that does is, when he was here, he had no X velocity. When he was here, he had no X velocity because he's not moving. So that should be the same. But if I move and pause it, he's moving at that point, so I'm going to do a not equal to and search, and that's narrowed it down a lot. Okay, so let's have a look at these. Okay. Now it kind of looks like this one is 04C0 is the bigger X velocity, and 04E0 is the finer X velocity. So I'm going to go and add those to the RAM watch. I'm going to stop labeling them at this point just because it'll take up too much time. But we can see what they're doing. And now, you can use this to figure out how to optimize your TASs, because if I'm moving and walking, I'm at 196. You can think of that like 196 almost, although not exactly. You can think of it like that, but if I jump, I'm at 180. So using that logic, it's actually faster to stay on the ground in Mega Man, which is true. So that's why having a velocity watch would be quite useful, because you can figure out things like that. Okay, so I've got those two. Now, I'm going to find Mega Man's health value, and that's not particularly useful for a TAS because you can kind of see it there, but it's really useful for testing stuff. So I'll start a new search, and I'm going to search equal to because his health is not changing, so I want to keep all the things that are equal at the moment. And then I'm going to stop this auto search, and I'm going to get hit. Now I'm going to search less than, because his health should be less. And don't always assume this, because it's possible that his health counts up as he gets hit, which sounds a bit bizarre, but sometimes games do that. So I'm going to get hit again, do another not equal to, because my health has changed since I searched last. And I might do another equal to because it's not changed since I did that very last search. Okay, so we've got a few addresses here. 02A1 was changing without me losing health, so I'm going to get rid of that. These values are going a bit crazy, so I'm going to get rid of those. Alright, let's see. So I could do another search here, but when you've got this many values, you can kind of just look at it. This one changed without me losing health, so I'll get rid of that. And let's see. And I doubt these zeros are health, because I don't have 0 health. Similarly, I don't have 255 health. Same logic here. And this one didn't change when I lost some health just then. So it looks like 006A is health, and we can check that because I'll freeze it and I won't lose any health. So that's why having your health watch can be really useful for testing, because you can just run through the level like this. You don't have to be good at the game. And you can just test stuff for your TAS without having to kind of play the game normally. So I might keep that. No, I'll unfreeze it, just to be proper. So I'll add that to the RAM watch, and that's his health. I might label that one. Alright, and another thing that can be useful is enemy health. And this one's a lot more useful than your own health. So what I'm going to do is start a new RAM search here. And I'm going to do this auto search equal to, because I'm not damaging him, so it should be equal. Now I'm going to hit him once. And I'm going to be brave and do a less than. Don't always assume that it's less than, because as I said before, it could be counting up. But most of the time you're safe to do less than. And it looks like this is his health. Now, don't forget that not all the enemies will have the same health address. So for example, if there's more than one enemy on screen, it can't keep track of both of their health with the same byte. So you do have to be careful of that. So this health is the health for this enemy, but it's not necessarily the health for all the other enemies, so you might need to find the address every time, or find an algorithm that can determine what the addresses for each enemy's health are. So anyway, his health lowers when I shoot it, but if I freeze the address, we can verify that it is actually the enemy's health. So I'll freeze it at 20, which is his full health. And we'll see no matter how many times I shoot him, he's just not dying. And there's another way to test it. I can unfreeze this, poke it to be 2, which means just change the value to 2, and I'll kill him in one hit. Alright, so that's... The reason it's so useful is because you can figure out exactly when you're hitting the enemy. So if I want to hit him on the earliest frame possible, I could try maybe 49136 here. So I could try the frame 49136 to shoot, and I could shoot a bullet. And his health didn't go down. So what about 49137? His health didn't go down. What about 49138? His health didn't go down. 49139. His health did go down. So 49139 looks like the earliest frame you could shoot him. Normally you'd be doing all this in TAS Studio, but it doesn't hurt to just do it by hand for a little demonstration like this. So maybe 49139, his health did go down. So what if I let go for a frame and shoot again on 49141? Now his health didn't go down again. What about do the first shot, what about 49142? His health didn't go down twice. 49143, his health didn't go down. 49144, his health didn't go down. 49145, and his health does go down twice. So having those addresses can be really useful for figuring out when you can actually damage an enemy. Because if I do just 2 quick shots, it's not the best strategy, because I'll do 2 shots, but I'm only hitting him once. And it'll probably sound like I hit him twice as well. So that did sound like 2 hits, but he only lost 1 unit of health, because each shot is doing 2 damage to him. So yeah, having those addresses can be really useful, because if you just sit there and fire at him really, really fast, it doesn't really do much. Yeah, but spacing them out is really good and important to optimize in a TAS. Okay, so I'll find a couple more things in this game. So I'm just going to find Gutsman's health. Now, I forget how many units of health he actually has, but it should be the same as Mega Man. Now, I think it's, 28, because I have 28 health now. So I'm going to take a pretty big risk here doing this search. But I'm just going to search for bytes that are equal to 28. So I can do this, equal to 28. Make sure you've got your comparison on equal, and I'm going to search for bytes that are equal to 28. And maybe I'll hit him And I might go back to previous value and search for things that are less than 28. Or less than the previous value, which was 28. So it won't always... So even though Mega Man's health really was the same as what this represents, like 28 little slices of this bar, Gutsman won't necessarily be the same. It's very likely that it will, but don't always assume that it will be. So it looks like this is his health. I'm going to add that to the RAM watch. So that's down to 26, and I might say poke it to be 2, and we'll see what happens. Went straight down to 2, so it looks like that's definitely his health. And I suppose if I freeze it at full health, even if I hit him, it won't change. So that's very likely his health. Okay, so that's how to find his health. And that's useful, but not extremely useful because you can see it on the screen already. But what might really be useful is his invincibility timer. So if I shoot a bullet here, I'm going to start a new RAM search and see if I can find the timer that counts down his invincibility frames. So this will be a timer that counts basically how long he's been flashing for and determines when he should stop flashing. So this is all the same. I could do an auto search here, but I'm just going to do it manually, just to be careful. Now, he started flashing, so I'm going to search not equal to, because I searched it before when he wasn't flashing. Now that he's flashing, that timer should be not equal to what it was before. So we've narrowed it down, and I'm going to search not equal to again, because he's been flashing for longer, the timer should be different. And we'll do it again a few times. Alright, let's see. Lots of things changing here. And I might search not equal to now that he's stopped flashing, and I'll do a few equal tos. Okay, now we've narrowed it down quite a bit, so we should be able to figure it out from here. Let's look at this. 112. So now that value just changed without him actually being flashing, so it's not that. Similarly, this changed without him flashing, so it's not that. And it's just did the same thing. So we've narrowed it down to 0056, which looks like it is his invincibility timer. So let's see what happens if I freeze it at 0, then he shouldn't actually have an invincibility timer. So if I can actually get a few shots, he doesn't have any invincibility frames. So I'll unfreeze it. And I can also demonstrate what happens if we freeze it while he's flashing. Then he's always flashing and you can't hit him. So yeah, that, for obvious reasons, that's a good one to watch when you're doing a TAS. And we can kind of see the select glitch working if I hit him, and you can see that that ran out while I was paused. So that's a good visualization of that. So that's all I'll show for Mega Man. And I wanted to show one more game, which is Sonic 1 on the Master System. And the reason for that is it's got a signed value for velocity. And what that means is basically it can take negative numbers. So I suppose Mega Man's velocity, we're looking at, I think it was this value. I should have labeled it really. But yeah, 196 when you're going backwards, 196 when you're going forwards. So I suppose that's more of a speed value. So it doesn't matter which direction he's going, that's just how fast he's going. But not all games will have that. So I'm going to load up, well first I'll save the RAM watch. So I suppose save it, I'm just going to save it in this root folder. And then next time, I suppose next time you load up your ROM, you've got it right there. So you don't have to find all these values again, you can just load them back up, which is really useful. Okay, so I'm going to load up Sonic. Now this game I've TAS before, and unfortunately it doesn't have a very good way of keeping track of your position. So I think what it actually does is it keeps track of where you are on the screen and where the screen is, but it doesn't keep track of your position through the level. So nothing will be, only the screen value will be increasing if you're running like this. but then it's not increasing if you're running like this. So it was really important to have a velocity watch in this game. So that's what I find now. Now we've got a bit more space to search through than the NES, but it shouldn't be too bad. So I suppose I'll do a few equal tos. So I'll start searching automatically, get rid of all those RNG cyclic values and stuff. Now I'm going to run and stop. And I'm still going to search equal to, because even though my horizontal position has changed, my speed is the same. And then I'm just going to start running, pause it, and search not equal to. So that's narrowed down a lot of addresses. Alright, let's see. So I'm going to start running and we're going to watch some addresses. So I start running. This has gone up to 16, so that might be very little measurement of speed. And he's clearly moving a bit there. And here we go, this has gone up to 1 as this looped over. This has gone up to 2. And it's gone up to 3, and looks like full speed is about 3. So it looks like these two have nothing to do with speed because they were 0 that whole time. So they really should have been changing if they had something to do with speed. But there's his velocity values. So we'll add those to the RAM watch, and we better figure out which one the big one is. So it looks like this is the big one. That's the small one, and you should put them probably in that order so it doesn't get confusing. Now, the reason I wanted to show this game is it looks pretty straightforward, and I mean, one of the reasons why you might look at it in hex is just so it makes more sense. So, for example, if I'm looking here, it's going to go up to maybe like 240, and then it's going to loop over. So you can think of these as like your units, and these as your tens, or maybe this is your actual speed, and this is your decimal points, maybe. But anyway, so it gets up to about 240-ish and loops over. So that doesn't really have much context there. But if I look at it in hex, it makes a lot more sense. So while it doesn't seem like it would be very natural, it does actually make some sense looking in hex. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. So it's going up by tens in hex each frame. So that makes a lot more sense than it going up by 16s in decimal. And that's why it can sometimes be useful. And now it's kind of weird when you go left though, because look at this, it's going to a really big speed when you go left. And that's not very intuitive. But what you can do is you can actually swap your view here to a signed byte, and that'll make a lot more sense. So sometimes it's good to do this. So now I can see it's negative when you're going left, which makes a lot more sense. And I suppose while I'm in this game, I'll find Y velocity just quickly as one last example. So I guess I'll start a new search, and I'll search for equal to without actually changing my Y velocity. Here I'm going up a hill. That shouldn't really, hopefully it shouldn't change my Y velocity. And then I'll jump, and it should be not equal to. Okay, so let's see. And I'm going to keep jumping for a bit. Now when he's going down, his velocity definitely should be not equal to, because when I clicked search last time I was going up. When I'm going down, when I'm going down, it definitely should be different than when I'm going up. And again, I've hit the ground, so now I'll search one more time, not equal to, and it looks like we've narrowed it down pretty well. So let's have a look. So 252, I'm going to add these both to the RAM watch. And let's have a look at this one signed. Similarly, this will allow negative numbers, so we're at -4 here. And looks like he's slowing down as he gets to the top, which is accurate, and it's gone positive. So it looks like going up is negative and going down is positive. So that looks like his Y. and this looks like his kind of like sub-velocity. Okay, so those are really useful values to have doing this TAS. So you can see how they're changing, and I think this game reacts properly if you freeze them. So if I freeze his X, ooh, some funky stuff happens. But he can't run right, at least. Running left is a bit weird, but that's most likely his X because I froze that and did that. He couldn't move when I froze his X velocity, and I think his Y does something weird. So that's a good example. Sometimes when you freeze stuff it has unpredictable results, but even though I froze his Y velocity and he still moved up and down, that doesn't mean it's not his Y velocity. That just means freezing it doesn't do what we would expect. And it really shouldn't in all cases, because freezing a value is not something that they originally intended, so it could have unpredictable consequences like that. So freezing is a good way to test, but don't rely on it 100%. And one last thing is sometimes when you're doing RAM search, not everything is 1 byte. So you can see in this case these are 2 bytes. But if I look at it in the hex editor, this is where his Y is in the hex editor. I mean, this was his big one, this was his little one. So it kind of goes little big, which is a bit weird. It's the wrong order, because you would expect it to go maybe like tens of units, but it doesn't. But in some games they're in the right order. So if you can't find what you want with 1 byte, a good thing to try is 2 bytes or 4 bytes, because as we see, these are using 2 bytes to measure his speeds. So I mean, it is sort of 2 bytes, but 2 bytes will just search for 2 bytes right next to each other, so I used 1 byte there. But it could be right next to each other. So yeah, if you can't find it, if you can't find what you need, try 2 bytes or 4 bytes as well. And also, if say we had his Y velocity big and you're having trouble finding the little one, it's often very close in the hex. So I suppose we could look at it, and this is a big one, this is his little one. If we had his big one and we didn't have his little one, then, I mean, as we go, that's changing. And when that loops over, big one loops over. So yeah, if that's a good method to find your kind of finer velocities as well, finer positions if you can't. So yeah, that's really useful looking at it in the hex editor as well sometimes. So I think that's all I wanted to say. This is just a couple of games, and if you're lucky enough, yeah, they do have them already known on TAS videos, like there for Mega Man, but often you will have to find these yourselves. So these methods should work on more games than just Sonic and Mega Man. They should work for most 2D games, but not necessarily every 2D game, because there could be some weird one that measures it strangely. But I hope this has helped and you have good luck finding these for your TAS.